So tonight we're going to finish chapter 4 of Galatians. And the verses we're going to cover are 21 through 31. And this is an allegory. So an allegory is real facts, concrete facts that happened. And this is going to be the lives of Abraham and Sarah and Hagar. And then Paul's going to take a spiritual reference from that. And you'll see when I tell you the story, which I'm going to do right now. Okay, starting in Genesis 12. Abraham and Sarah, their names were Abram and Sarai at this point in time. There was a famine in the land of Canaan, so they went down to Egypt. And even at 80, Sarah was so beautiful that Abram was afraid that somebody would kill him so he could have her for a wife. So he goes, look, let's lie. And we're going to say that you're my sister. Okay? Let me tell you something about concocting a lie. This will come back to haunt him later. So they do that. And when she goes into Egypt, the princes of Pharaoh go, wow, she's beautiful. Let's bring her to Pharaoh. And so they do. And then they bring Abram because that's her brother. And so Pharaoh gives Abram all kinds of gifts. He gives him oxen and donkeys and sheep and maidservants and men servants. This maidservant is going to end up being Hagar.
Yes.
Yeah, he gets Hagar because all of this happened with his lie. So then he's going to take her to be his wife. And that night, all these plagues happened in his house, and he knew there was something wrong. And he called Abram, and he said, "What is this that you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was thy wife?" This is Genesis 12. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away and his wife and all that he had. But this is what he said in verse 19. "I might have taken her to be my wife. Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her and go." But he gave him all of these gifts. But Pharaoh had more honor than Abraham did. But this is where he acquires Hagar, and she's a slave. They call it a bondwoman or a maidservant. It's a slave. Next, this is chapter 16, verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, was barren. That means she could not have children. It just wasn't that she wasn't having them. She couldn't. It was physically impossible for her. And she had a handmaiden, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, "Behold now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain a child from her." And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. Well, that didn't take much encouragement. That was a custom that in order to get a baby, you could have your servant. But you know what? God had already promised Abraham a long time ago that the seed would come through him, the promised seed. And they just couldn't wait. So this is going to be part of the allegory. They're doing it on their own flesh. They're going to try to make this promise come true. But it doesn't go good. So, Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his name Ishmael. And Abraham was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. So verse 15. And God said unto Abram, "For Sarai thy wife, thou shalt call her name not Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name." Sarah means princess. "And I will bless her, and I will give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nation, and kings shall come out of her. Now listen what Abraham does. Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? Now this is what Abraham says. Oh, that Ishmael could be before my eyes. He's saying, this was his firstborn. He fell in love with this boy. And he's saying, couldn't he be the promised one? Can't he be before my eyes? Can't we just let Ishmael? No, because that was of his own works. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being also old? So they both think it's a big joke. They're not really trusting God that he can do this miracle. They wanted the baby that they could just do naturally. But God said, he made a promise. And so this son is going to be the son of promise. And it has to be a miracle because Sarah can't have kids, right? So I told you about Abraham laughing and Sarah laughing. Isaac means laughter. That's what his name means. That's why God told him to name him Isaac, because kind of remind him, remember how you thought this was funny? God, made a miracle happen. Okay, now we're going to go to chapter 21. I'm going to start with verse 9. And Sarah saw that the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, was mocking her. So she's walking around thinking, I'm the one who bore the child, and thinking that she is in a position above Sarah. She's not, because she's a slave. But she got this pride going on in her that, hey, I'm the one that had the baby, you didn't. She was mocking Sarah. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with my son. And when Isaac was weaned, say about 2 years old, and Ishmael was about 15, Abraham threw a big celebration for his weaning. I guess it was something they did in those days. Well, at that time, Ishmael started making fun of Isaac, a 2-year-old. Oh, wow. Yeah. And you got to think about it. His dreams of ever having an inheritance were gone when Isaac came along. Mm-hmm. He knew that he would be out of the picture. And so because of his mocking and because of Hagar, and because they were the works of the flesh, which represent the law, God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad. He says, don't be so sad over Ishmael. And because of the bondwoman, he probably loved her too. In all that Sarah has said unto thee, hearken unto her voice. For in Isaac shall thy seed, Christ, be called. And also the son of the bondwoman will I make a great nation, because he is from thy seed. So just because Ishmael came from Abraham, God's going to bless him. And out of Ishmael come the Arabs. That's where the Arab nation came from. All right, so now we're going to go back to what we were going to be studying tonight. But you have to have that backstory to understand what Paul's saying. So verse 21 in Galatians 4, tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do you not hear the law? The law speaks of death. It's the law of sin and death. For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, the one by the bondwoman, someone who's not free, and the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh. I mean, they did that on their own. What didn't take a miracle. But he of the free woman was by promise, because God kept his promise to Abraham and caused a miracle to happen, that those two at 90 and 100 could have a baby. Which things are an allegory? For these are the two covenants. Okay, so Hagar and Ishmael are the law, because that was what they did by works. Abraham did that by his own works. For these are two covenants. The one from Mount Sinai. What came from Mount Sinai?
The Ten Commandments.
The law. So he's telling you that Hagar and Ishmael represent Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage. The law puts you under bondage, which is Hagar. This corresponds to Hagar. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. Remember, the Arabs were the descendant of her, and answers to Jerusalem, which is now, and is in bondage with her children. Where were these Judaizers coming from? The Judaizers. They were coming from Jerusalem.
Right.
Yes, they were coming from Jerusalem. So that's what he's saying. It was these Jews in Jerusalem that were still wanting to keep the law. And they were going to all the churches that Paul would start and trying to introduce this. And so that's what he's saying. It represents Sinai, it represents the first covenant, and it represents the earthly Jerusalem. But Jerusalem, which above is free, which is the mother of us all. Now I'm going to read to you what J. Vernon McGee says about that verse. He describes it perfectly. Which Jerusalem is above? It's the new Jerusalem, which is presented to us in the 20th chapter of Revelation as it comes down from God out of heaven. As old Jerusalem is the mother city of those under the law, so the new Jerusalem is the mother city of the believer under grace. The believer neither here nor hereafter has any connection with legalism. Verse 27, for it is written, rejoice thou barren that bearest not. That's Sarah. Break forth and cry, thou that travailest not. For the desolate has many more children than she which hath a husband. So what he's saying is, the descendants of Sarah are much more numerous than the descendants of Hagar. That's what he's saying right there. And, you know, I wanted to tell you something about Abraham's name being changed. Abram means exalted father, and his name was changed to Abraham, which is father of a multitude, because that's what was going to happen. Verse 28. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise. The children according to promise. But as then, he that was born after the flesh, that's Ishmael, persecuted him that was born after the spirit, that was Isaac. Even so it is now. That's what he's saying. That happened then, and it's still happening now. That these legalists are persecuting the ones that are living by faith. You see the similarity, the allegory? Hagar and Abraham, by their own works, produced a son, and God said, no, throw the mother and the son out. Throw them out. And you know what he's saying? He's telling this church, throw out those Judaizers. Just throw them out. Because he's saying that's what God said to do with Hagar and Ishmael. Nevertheless, what saith the scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but children of the free. That's my lesson.